I'm Lisa. It's nearly a year since I tied the knot with Robert. We've been happily cohabiting in a cozy, budget-friendly apartment, sharing dreams of upgrading to a brand new standalone home. Despite his parents' residence being just a stone's throw away, they rarely drop by. Robert once mentioned, Mom prefers not to interfere in our marriage. That's why she keeps her distance, despite the proximity. Hearing this only deepened my admiration for my mother-in-law. For many women, the specter of a meddling mother-in-law looms large after marriage. Yet it seems I lucked out in that department. If meddling were to occur, I'd certainly put up a firm resistance. My folks always taught me, if someone picks on you, give it back twice as hard. Then they'll think twice about crossing you again. But it appears unlikely I'll need to engage in such battles with my mother-in-law. Thus, I could enjoy a stress-free atmosphere when it came to family dynamics. After years of dedicated work, our careers flourished, prompting earnest discussions about homeownership. It was during this time that my parents, privy to our aspirations, presented us with a compelling proposition. Should you decide to embark on the journey of building your own home, we'd be delighted to offer you a portion of our land. They graciously extended the offer. While my parents weren't affluent, a stroke of fortune from my grandfather's past had endowed them with valuable land to pass down. When they consulted my grandfather about the idea, he simply remarked, "I've entrusted it to you, so do as you see fit." Excitedly relaying this to Robert, he wholeheartedly embraced their generosity. Let's seize this opportunity with gratitude. I can never adequately express my thanks to your parents and your grandfather as well. It's his legacy, after all, he remarked, acknowledging the significance of the offer. Thus commence our exploration into the type of dwelling that would suit us best. Weekends were spent perusing showrooms, marveling at our boss's opulent abode, and consulting with real estate agents regarding upcoming developments. Indeed, the anticipation of planning often outshines the reality of implementation, doesn't it? However, our idyllic reverie was abruptly interrupted by a phone call from my mother-in-law. As Robert fielded the call, it became evident that she had somehow caught wind of our aspirations for a new home. With a tone that hinted at unexpected expectations, she proposed, "If you're considering building a house, why not make it a duplex so we can reside together?" Her proposal left us both speechless. It had never crossed our minds that my mother-in-law, who had been largely uninvolved in our affairs, would express a desire to cohabit in a duplex. After a brief moment of stunned silence, Robert offered a vague response, opting to sidestep the question altogether. His reaction wasn't unexpected. The notion of a duplex hadn't even registered on our radar. Our plans had centered around creating space for a future child, and the prospect of redoing everything from scratch was daunting. Yet, outright rejection of the idea risked straining our relationship with my mother-in-law. I shared Robert's bewilderment. We had committed to monthly family dinners at her place, and during one such gathering, she seamlessly picked up the conversation where we had left off. Even with Robert's brother, Mark, being a single father, she began, "Have you given any more thought to our discussion about the duplex? I truly believe it's a wonderful idea. What are your thoughts? We're more than willing to pitch in financially, and selling our current place should fetch a decent sum. Plus, with kids on the horizon, wouldn't it be beneficial to have us right next door for any emergencies? It's all advantages, isn't it?" With unwavering enthusiasm, she'd embarked on a rapid-fire enumeration of the benefits of a duplex. Despite my attempts to interject, she persisted. Admittedly, her points held merit. While the prospect of assistance during the arrival of a baby and the financial offer were enticing, I held firm in my belief that my husband and I were capable of handling any challenges that arose on our own. Trusting in the support of my own parents seemed preferable to inviting potential conflict by relying too heavily on hers. As she observed my contemplative expression, she pressed on, "Is it really so dreadful to live with us? I had hoped you didn't harbor any ill feelings towards us." But perhaps I misjudged. Her tone seemed to hint at disappointment, prompting me to feign obliviousness as I hastily departed her home. Despite my evasion, she persisted in bombarding my husband daily with the same plea, leaving me feeling increasingly stressed by the relentless pressure. "What's your take on this, Robert?" I asked, grappling with conflicting emotions. The idea of living together isn't entirely unfavorable. Having our parents close by could provide a sense of security. However, I'm hesitant to sacrifice our privacy and independence. After considerable deliberation, we reached a decision to politely decline my mother-in-law's proposition. Preserving our alone time took precedence in our minds. We resolved to convey our decision with clarity, hopeful that my mother-in-law would comprehend our perspective. As we made our way to my mother-in-law's house for our monthly family dinner, we braced ourselves to share our decision with her. However, before we could articulate our thoughts, she interjected, "Oh, regarding the duplex, we've already started making arrangements." Stunned, we exchanged puzzled glances. "What?" I managed to utter, only to be interrupted once more. "And to top it off, Mark will be moving in too. You know, being a single dad is tough. Let's lend him a hand with the child. Besides, gaining some experience with children will be beneficial when you start your own family. Don't you agree? You should definitely consider it." Her unexpected announcement left us dumbfounded, and we found ourselves so taken aback that we completely lost track of our original purpose for visiting. In the face of our silence, my mother-in-law interpreted it as agreement and proceeded with the construction of the duplex, consulting my father-in-law and brother-in-law along the way. Despite our attempts to express our dissent, our concerns were repeatedly brushed aside with dismissive remarks like, "We're busy at the moment, let's discuss this later." As the plans for the duplex gained momentum, the financial burden fell on our in-laws, relieving us of a significant expense. However, the realization dawned that not only would we be sharing a residence with our in-laws, but also with my single father brother-in-law, necessitating our involvement in caring for his child. The weight of the situation bore down heavily on me, and my husband's resignation only added to my despair. "We're powerless to stop it now. Let's just accept it," he conceded, his defeatist attitude echoing my own feelings of futility. Reluctantly, we pressed forward, finalizing the blueprint and deliberating over interior details like tiles and flooring. Typically, at this juncture, we should have secured the necessary funds. However, the promised financial assistance from my in-laws was conspicuously absent. Frustrated, my husband reached out to his mother, only to be met with a request for immediate financial aid in lieu of the promised funds. "Could you cover it for me? I'll repay you within a month," she pleaded. "Fine," he acquiesced. Though the funds were unavailable at present, the project forged ahead, rendering any attempt to halt it futile at this stage. Robert and I were barely scraping by to cover the expenses ourselves, but resorting to such measures seemed unnecessary. The selfish behavior of my in-laws ignited fury within both of us. "You talk about covering the cost as if it's pocket change," Robert erupted at his mother. "Oh, come on," she retorted. "She'll pay it back in a month. Has she ever deceived you?" Suddenly, my brother-in-law interjected. Taken aback by his interference, Robert reluctantly agreed to wait for a month for the payment and began eagerly anticipating his mother's transfer. Feeling conflicted, I decided to seek counsel from my parents about the situation. The following day, I sought solace and guidance at my parents' home, grappling with the dilemma and hoping for a way to put the plans on hold. Expressing our predicament, I questioned whether we could postpone the project. In response, my parents offered a reassuring solution. "We had always intended to give you that land, and if they're committed to paying later, we'll cover the expenses," they assured me. Overwhelmed with gratitude, I sought confirmation. "Truly? Are you certain?" "Absolutely, dear. Your happiness means the world to us. Don't sacrifice your dream home for the sake of your future children. Let's not allow this multifamily arrangement to come to fruition," they affirmed, their words comforting me deeply. Touched by their unwavering support, tears welled up in my eyes. My mom, with a mischievous grin, chimed in, "Besides, if they're always around, it'll make it difficult for me to visit, won't it? And I intend to spoil all the grandkids myself." With my mother's assistance, construction progressed smoothly, and at long last, our dream home stood complete. However, a month passed without any financial contribution from my in-laws. To our surprise, they began moving their belongings in ahead of us. A peculiar situation indeed for a supposed duplex. Where was our designated space? Since the funds for a duplex were never transferred, we hadn't constructed one. Consequently, there was no room reserved for them, yet they began occupying the area we had earmarked for our future children. To compound matters, my mother-in-law proceeded to host a housewarming event, inviting her friends under the pretense of showcasing our dream duplex. It's a cozy space, albeit compact, but the garden is delightful. We're even planning to cultivate a vegetable patch. When the harvest comes in, I'll share some with you, she boasted, as though they had contributed financially to the project. Oblivious to the truth, her friends admired the house before departing. After their move-in and a period of settling, 2 months elapsed with no payment from my in-laws. Despite Robert's confrontations, their response remained the same. Soon, very soon. This pattern persisted for 3 months, then half a year, without any change. To exacerbate matters, my mother-in-law abruptly declared, "We've decided against selling our house. Instead, Mark and his children will reside there," making it clear she had no intention of honoring their financial commitment. Yet, I wasn't taken aback. My husband and I had previously speculated that she had no intention of paying us. Then came her audacious request. "I've noticed the house feels a bit crowded with you two living here. Would you mind vacating? I occasionally have friends who want to stay over, and I'd like the flexibility to use the space as I please. Doesn't that sound reasonable?" In response, Robert's tone grew firm as he asserted, "That wasn't the agreement. Why should we have to leave our own home? Both of you are employed and rarely at home. Besides, since you don't have children, it shouldn't pose an issue. Moreover, Lisa's family is affluent, right? Surely you can afford to build a new house." I was left speechless by my mother-in-law's brazen remarks, and my husband shared my disbelief. "You haven't fulfilled any of your financial commitments as promised. Did you ever intend to?" he challenged. What choice did I have? "I wanted to provide a home for my son, a single father, and his precious children," she retorted, growing increasingly agitated. Realizing the futility of the situation, we retreated to our bedroom that night to discuss our options. If this continues, my mother and her family will undoubtedly attempt to evict us and take over the house. I voiced my fears. "Sadly, I think you're right," my husband concurred, his frustration evident. The following days brought a barrage of verbal attacks from my mother-in-law, accompanied by relentless harassment. "If you want to avoid being bullied as a daughter-in-law, you better leave promptly. This is what they call mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law drama," she taunted. Confronted with the reality of our predicament, I regretted underestimating the situation. However, determined not to be a passive victim, I resolved to take action. A month later, after strategizing with my husband, parents, and grandfather, we devised a plan. We made the decision to vacate the house in order to execute our plan. With resolve, my husband informed my mother-in-law, "We're moving out. You'll have the freedom to entertain your friends as you wish. It'll make you happier that way." Her face lit up with delight at the news. We opted to relocate to a newly constructed apartment that had caught our eye, returning to the realm of renting. "It's reminiscent of our early days as newlyweds," my husband remarked, reflecting on the peaceful life we once enjoyed in a similar setting. A week later, the phone rang, and I overheard my husband's conversation. "I understand. That's fantastic news. When can we expect it?" I was certain our plan had succeeded. Indeed, the day after we formulated our strategy with my parents and grandfather, we listed our house for sale. We swiftly found a buyer who requested we vacate the premises within 3 weeks. Seizing the opportunity while my mother-in-law was absent, we opened our doors to acquaintances, colleagues, and interested parties seeking to view the house. The call we received today was from a family who had decided to purchase it. We arranged for 2 spacious trucks and coordinated with movers to swiftly load our belongings and furniture onto them. Strategically, we chose a time when my in-laws had announced their weekend getaway to a New York theme park with their grandsons. As they likely reveled in the company of a certain mouse mascot, we seized the opportunity. With their overnight stay planned, we prepared meticulously in advance. The execution of our plan unfolded seamlessly, thanks to the efficiency of the professional movers. Packing was completed well ahead of schedule, leaving us poised and ready in front of the house upon my in-laws' return in the evening. Sensing the tension emanating from my in-laws as they entered the house, my mother-in-law's anxious voice pierced the air, demanding answers to the sudden change. Meanwhile, my father-in-law echoed her distress. Robert and I observed calmly from the outside, waiting for the opportune moment to reveal the truth. "Everything's loaded onto these trucks. The destination's noted on a piece of paper stuck onto them. Please proceed there. It might be a bit snug, but it'll suffice for the 2 of you. Well, perhaps it'll feel a bit crowded if you have guests over. Additionally, this house has already been sold. It's now someone else's property. Take care," I informed my in-laws, their disbelief palpable. What do you mean you sold it? This was our home. You can't just. Our home. They protested vehemently. However, the property was registered under Lisa's parents' name, and the house was legally ours. We had every right to sell it, especially considering they hadn't contributed a single dollar. Their audacity to claim ownership without fulfilling their promises left us indignant. In the face of their stunned silence, Robert delivered a final decree before our departure. We've managed things thus far, but unloading is your responsibility now. Surely you can handle that much. Their feeble protestations of financial incapacity were met with a revelation. I'm aware you're not lacking funds. You've been selling Lisa's belongings and pocketing the proceeds, Robert declared, exposing their deceit. Their expressions shifted from shock to shame as the truth sank in. How did you find out? They stammered. Does it matter? Robert dismissed. Furthermore, you needn't repay us. Consider it severance pay. Spend it as you wish. And with that, we'll be on our way. I doubt our paths will cross again, Robert declared, severing ties with his parents. Taking my hand, we swiftly departed for home. Upon our return, we found our parents and grandparents to share the successful outcome of our plan, bringing them immense joy. Furthermore, my grandfather, aware of our impending move to an apartment, revealed, I still have some land remaining. I'll gift it to you as well. I'll even cover half the expenses for building a new house. Encouraged by his generosity, we embraced the opportunity and embarked on constructing our new home. 6 months later, we fulfilled our dream of constructing a beautiful single-family home. Nestled a bit away from the bustling city center, we enjoy the crisp air and the warm hospitality of our neighbors. Our hearts brim with contentment. As for my in-laws, their whereabouts remain a mystery. It appears they reached out to my parents seeking financial assistance. Additionally, they approached their son, who is set to remarry next year, hoping to live with him, only to be met with a firm refusal due to his future wife's plans. When my parents were approached, they firmly declined any involvement with our family matters, setting clear boundaries. Robert expressed his regrets to my parents for his parents' actions, but they reassured him, saying, "From now on, we're your true parents. Lean on us as much as you need, my son." Anticipating potential future challenges, my parents advised us to install a home security system for added peace of mind. We find solace in knowing that my parents are prepared to refuse entry to his parents should they attempt to visit. Additionally, we've welcomed a guard dog, a small, adorable puppy, into our yard. Their mere presence should deter any potential intruders. With these precautions in place, we can finally bid farewell to any interference from his parents. This marks the start of a fresh chapter for us. In the coming years, we envision building a joyful family, complete with children. We're determined to protect our happiness at all costs. It's a vow we've made to each other, one we intend to keep.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. "Take care." That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. "Let's just move on." Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?" "We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs. Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.